Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the wildest turnarounds in modern sports history. We're going to look at exactly how France went from being massive footballing underachievers to basically the world's most unstoppable talent factory. So let's jump right in.
To really get to the bottom of this mystery, we have to look at this totally fascinating geographical anomaly. When you look closely at the global landscape of football, there is one specific region that just churns out elite, world-class talent at a rate that completely defies basic statistical logic. I'm talking about Greater Paris. But to really grasp the sheer scale of this, we need to look at the numbers.
82. That is the staggering number of players at the 2018 World Cup who were playing for nations they weren't even born in. And within that massive migration of talent, France served as the largest birthplace of World Cup players by a huge margin. I mean, they aren't just fueling their own national team, they're literally supplying the entire globe. But believe it or not, French football wasn't always this golden.
Actually, there's a really striking historical paradox here. Frenchmen essentially founded the absolute biggest institutions of modern international football. You got Robert Guérin becoming the very first FIFA president back in 1904. Then Jules Rimet creates the actual World Cup in 1930. And Henri Delaney pioneers the European Championship in 1960. Yet despite literally inventing the global infrastructure of the game, their own national team was historically defined by spectacular, honestly almost comical failures.
Now sure, they had a few bright spots later on, like just Fontaine's insane still-standing record of 13 goals in the 1958 World Cup, or that 1984 Euro win led by the brilliant Michel Platini. But early French football, it was mostly characterized by incredibly heavy defeats. Get this, in 1906, they lost 15-0 against England. And English reports actually suggest England missed a penalty on purpose just because they felt bad. 2 years later, they lost 17-1 to Denmark. It was just this bleak landscape of misqualifications and early exits.
But the absolute rock-bottom moment, the real catalyst for everything we're talking about today, hit on November 17, 1993. It's known simply as La Tragedia. France needed just one single point in their final two home games to qualify for the 1994 World Cup. Well, they completely blew the first game. And then, in the final agonizing seconds against Bulgaria, absolute disaster struck.
Instead of just holding possession in the corner to secure that draw they so desperately needed, French winger David Ginola tried to launch a cross into the box. Bulgaria intercepted it, sparked a fatal counterattack, and scored. The stadium literally fell dead silent. In the immediate aftermath, French coach Gérard Houllier was ruthless. He publicly labeled Ginola the murderer of French hopes. It was a full-blown, real-life national sports crisis.
Facing this devastating crisis, the French Football Federation decided to hit the gas on a structural blueprint they'd been brewing. In 1988, they officially opened the Clairefontaine Academy. The goal was to establish a rigorous, nationwide system with three main steps: meticulously scout the absolute best youth players, develop them super intensely during their most crucial years, and then feed them directly into elite clubs and the national team.
But, a brilliant system still needs raw material, right? Well, France had an absolute abundance of it. Following World War II, France faced severe labor shortages while trying to rebuild the country. So they brought in huge waves of immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe, plus colonies in Africa and the Caribbean. And check this out. A whopping 38% of those immigrants settled directly in the Greater Paris region. This massive concentration created the ultimate demographic talent pool.
Many of these newly arrived workers settled in the banlieue, those working-class housing developments just outside the major cities. Now, while these Parisian suburbs frequently dealt with economic hardship, unemployment, and crime, they also became absolute hotbeds for street football. These neighborhoods provided an immense, flowing pipeline of young, hungry, and incredibly diverse talent. And that brand new Clairefontaine Academy system, it was perfectly positioned to cast a wide net, capture all that raw talent, and refine it.
This incredible intersection of shifting demographics and elite coaching birthed a uniquely multicultural squad. By the late 90s, the French team actually looked like everyday France. They earned this fantastic, affectionate nickname, Black, Blanc, Beur, which translates to Black, White, Arab. It was this beautiful representation of players with African, Caribbean, Pacific Island, and European heritage, all wearing the same tricolor jersey.
Enter the architect who had to snap all these puzzle pieces together, Coach Aimé Jacquet. Taking over right after that 1993 tragedy, this guy was utterly ruthless. He pragmatically dropped France's biggest, most famous, but let's face it, unpredictable, stars. He sidelined the captain Air Cantona, dropped former Ballon d'Or winner Jean-Pierre Papin, and removed David Ginola entirely. The goal? Minimize the risk and build a cohesive, ironclad defensive unit entirely around a young, elegant playmaker you might have heard of, Zinedine Zidane.
Now, as you might imagine, Jacquet's decisions made the French public completely lose their minds. He faced a highly tense, deeply personal campaign from the French press, especially the major newspaper L'Équipe, who basically questioned his every single tactical move. But Jacquet? He just resolutely shielded his players, he ignored the noise, held candid meetings behind closed doors, and rigidly maintained his blueprint heading straight into the 1998 World Cup, which, by the way, France was hosting on home soil.
Once that 1998 tournament kicked off, Jacquet's vision proved completely prophetic. The team wasn't exactly some free-scoring machine. No, surprisingly, it was the defense that delivered salvation in the knockout rounds. Against Paraguay, defender Laurent Blanc scores the first-ever World Cup golden goal in the 114th minute. And then, in the semifinal against Croatia, right-back Lilian Thuram miraculously scores 2 stunning goals to win the game. The mind-blowing part? Thuram played 142 games for his country over his entire career. Those were literally the only 2 goals he ever scored. Talk about divine intervention, right?
So this unbelievable defensive grit sets up the ultimate climax on July 12, 1998. France, the historic underachievers, had made it to the final against the overwhelming favorites, Brazil. I mean, Brazil was the definitive footballing nation, a team loaded with global superstars, led by the 21-year-old Ballon d'Or holder, the legendary Ronaldo. Nobody, and I mean nobody outside the French locker room gave France a real chance.
But the build-up to this final turned into an absolute thriller. Just hours before kickoff, rumors start swirling that Ronaldo had suffered a severe medical emergency, convulsions, in the team hotel. His name was actually withdrawn from the initial squad list. The French players only heard these whispers while they were sitting on the bus heading to the stadium. Shockingly, Ronaldo was reinstated at the absolute last minute and stepped onto the pitch. But man, the entire Brazilian squad looked visibly rattled and just completely out of sorts. And France mercilessly capitalized on that chaos. They absolutely smothered Brazil in the midfield. The balding genius, Zinedine Zidane, who wasn't exactly known for his heading ability, by the way, bulleted in 2 massive headers from corner kicks right before halftime. Then Emmanuel Petit added a devastating 3rd goal in stoppage time, securing an improbable 3-0 victory. France had just completely dismantled the kings of football to win their first ever World Cup.
Now you might be thinking, okay, that was just a one-off fluke, right? A miracle on home soil. But history proved otherwise. Jacquet retired right after the World Cup, literally going on top. And his assistant, Roger Lemaire, took the wheel. Lemaire kept that core squad perfectly intact, and just 2 years later, they marched right back to the top to capture the Euro 2000 title, proving their absolute dominance over the sport.
And let me tell you, that Euro 2000 final was every bit as dramatic as the World Cup run. Facing Italy, France was down 1-0 in the 90th minute. Italian families were literally celebrating in the stands, completely convinced they had won the whole thing. But then, Sylvain Wiltord sneaks in a 94th-minute equalizer to save the day, forcing extra time. And then, in the 103rd minute, David Trezeguet rifles in a picture-perfect golden goal straight into the roof of the net. The legacy was sealed. Pure, unadulterated gold.
By this point, the system's legacy was permanently entrenched. Fast forward to the modern era, and that Clairefontaine blueprint, combined with the Blanc talent pool, is stronger than it has ever been. Just remember this number. Out of all 50 French players representing various nations at the 2018 World Cup, 16 of them were born or raised in Greater Paris. That includes global superstar Kylian Mbappe, who emerged straight from the Bondi Banlieue. The pipeline didn't just stay open, it grew wider.
So as Paris continues to supply elite, game-changing talent to both the French national team and squads all over the globe, we're left with a pretty massive question to ponder. We've just seen how decades of failure fueled a ruthless structural rebuild, which then perfectly collided with unique historical demographics. Can any other nation on Earth ever successfully engineer a dynasty quite like this, or is the French model just a one-of-a-kind lightning strike in the history of sports? Thanks for joining us for this explainer, and we'll catch you next time.